Hello there.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come. Coming in too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am C-3PO, human-cyborg relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello.
It's an epic of heroes.
Good luck.
And villains. And aliens from 1,000 worlds. Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer.
Action, adventure, special effects. These were the trademarks of Star Wars.
I wonder if you were inspired particularly by a history teacher in junior high school or high school to make you love it so much.
Well, it's interesting. It was really my, I don't even know what year it was, high school English teacher, actually, that probably had that effect on me more than anyone. And my freshman year in college, creative writing teacher did that for me. They're both teachers that paid a little extra attention to me that helped me on a, you know, just on a one-on-one basis. And as a result, it sort of inspired me to do more than I, you know, thought I could do at the time.
This is a very simple, basic idea.
It's a story about a farm boy in Nebraska, and not on Tatooine.
It was originally designed to be a modern fairy tale.
About good and evil, you know, and what prevails and what doesn't prevail.
It's unlimited, the possibilities of what they can do.
If this one doesn't work out, we're sort of finished. But hopefully it will justify it as a series. Make you say, gee, what happens next?
No, Alderaan, it's peaceful. We have no weapons. You
would
can't...
prefer another target, a military target, then name name it, now!
Well, a lot of times it has impossible dialogue to say. You can type it, like Harrison says, you can type it fine. There's no way to say it.
You!
The actual production is shot in England, and also Star Wars, by the nature of the exotic environments that we deal with, we sort of travel all around the globe and have things going on various continents, actually.
Action! The fun begins. How long before you can make the jump to light speed?
Take a few minutes for the Navi computer to calculate the coordinates.
A few minutes? Are you kidding? At the rate they're gaining?
No, what is it? You have to shoot this. Traveling through hyperspace is like dusting crops, kid. Without precise calculations, we fly too close to a store. They're bounce into a supermarket and then...
Yeah.
Be a hell of a mess.
What's that?
Watch. We're losing the deflector shields. Go strap yourselves in. Be careful on the way out.
Yeah, sure. I'm taking it very cautiously.
You go away.
Bounce too near a supermarket?
The Star Wars series started out as a movie that ended up being so big that I took each act and cut it into its own movie. But in order to create that movie, I had to create a backstory. And there's this very elaborate backstory that was created in order to get to the point of the first part of Star Wars, the first film. And it's that backstory that hasn't been told yet. This story, the one that we've seen, pays off in a much larger way because it's the you get a sense it's the son vindicating the father, but we are doing this in a context that we don't know where the father came from or what made him be what he is or what needs to be vindicated. So we're just seeing the sort of vindication without, you know, the act being seen, and so it's very interesting, and we don't really understand, I think, clearly what the conflict is at this point. The original concept really related to a father and a son and twins, I mean a son and a daughter, and it was that relationship that was the core of the story. It went through a lot of machinations before I even got to the first draft screenplay. You know, various characters changed shapes and sizes, and it isn't really until it evolved into what is close to what Star Wars now is that then I began to go back and deal with the stories that evolved to get us to that point, and that, you know, it's hard to say really where the, you know, how it evolves into a piece, because it, you know, you evolve it with various scenes and various moments, and when you're creating something like that, the story itself takes over and the characters take over and they begin to tell the story apart from what you're doing, you know, and you kind of go with it, and you have to go with it, and it sends you down some very funny paths, and you have to figure out how to break that apart and put the puzzle back together so it makes sense and is cohesive. But that's the adventure of writing, is the fact that you're not sure where it's going to go. And I think it took a while. I mean, I worked on Star Wars for a couple of years before it evolved into what it is.
George talked about Star Wars, and he didn't have a title yet, but the concept for a film that was going to be a big galactic war. And when he started to talk to Fox, it seemed to him a good idea to have some illustrations to show the scope of the visuals that he'd planned, which I think in George's mind was a big part of the movie. And I told him that I'd love to do it. He and Gary came over one day with the script. I started on it the same day. I really got into it right away, working on those original paintings that were really done to sell the film. George and Gary went off, left me doing more paintings. Fox wanted me to do more paintings. Gary and George went to England and started scouting this whole thing from a budget point of view. Came back 3 or 4 weeks later saying, looks like they're going to do this film. I never really thought it would be a film while I was working on those original paintings. It seemed so vast a project to me. There was quite a few things set up by George, and I felt I was drawing what he wanted things to look like. I don't think that either of us thought that's the way the movie was going to look, necessarily. These were just sketches that were the best we could do in terms of how we felt it should look, but not necessarily the end product in the sense that this was really going to be it. But it sort of turned out to be it in the end, for the most part. And some of those paintings were virtually rendered intact onto the screen in Star Wars for certain scenes.
Everything came either from my sketches or Ralph's paintings and drawings and any input that George might have, you know. There wasn't a lot of outside influences on Star Wars.
With his Star Wars contract completed, George Lucas now needed a rebel force up to the challenge of production. In the summer of 1975, he founded the visual effects company Industrial Light and Magic.
We were kind of like a weird kind of fraternity of robotic photography nuts or something like that.
We moved into a big empty warehouse in Van Nuys, right near the Van Nuys airport, and basically started from scratch. I mean, it was empty.
We took the concept of motion control, which is essentially an old concept of being able to duplicate camera motion through more than one pass so that you can generate multiple elements of film, and we made it production savvy by tying it into a computer, which was at that point custom-built microprocessors. There were no PCs. You didn't go down buying a PC. We built them from scratch.
At the same time the camera system was being built, another team began constructing model spaceships.
This shot was the first shot that was completed by ILM. We printed out a big picture and framed it, and everybody signed it and gave it to George, and it said, at the bottom it said, "Our first shot." That was at the point where we'd spent some millions of dollars to get the visual effects facility up and running.
Fairly early on that the idea of a space dogfight came into play. Of wouldn't it be interesting to take that kind of visual excitement and put it into outer space. So it was written, I think, very early on. It's in almost all the drafts of the screenplay. And in order to, I had no idea at that point how I was going to accomplish it. So it really wasn't until I sat down to figure it out and got together with some of the people who I brought in to start ILM that we began to focus on the fact that we would have to create a different technology in order to accomplish that. The approach that I had, which is to do it editorially rather than pictorially, I think I had from the very beginning, because it seemed inconceivable that I could actually do what Kubrick had done in 2001 and have it be done for any kind of amount of money that I would have access to. So I figured I would do it by sleight of hand using a lot of editorial techniques. And so I had to create something that was in motion. And we did some what we call videomatics, which we'd take little models and move them around on video and transfer that. And we did do some little animated pieces with very crude animation. And then I took footage from actual dogfights that we got out of gun cameras in World War I and World War II, and various documentaries and that sort of thing. And out of that created a sequence that is more visual in motion. We have always had to use some kind of device to give you the sense of motion. For the end battle of New Hope, I used bits and pieces from documentary films about World War II and war footage of airplanes flying and that sort of thing.
Here they come.
Into which Luke Skywalker is thrust is derived from World War II dogfights as shown in Hollywood films. For the space-age dogfight, detailed models are used. With the computer controls developed especially for Star Wars, it was possible to film the elements for this sequence with a freedom never before exercised in motion picture production. By controlling the motion of the camera and by remembering those motions, the computer allows for more complex and visually dynamic photography. Again, the models are photographed against blue screen to allow for the placement of other elements into the scene.
Something as large as Star Wars, which is a very, very complicated kind of movie, it really needs a lot of people all working together to make it happen.
fact, Han Solo's space freighter, the Millennium Falcon, was Star Wars' most elaborate set. It was constructed on one of the 9 sound stages the company used at the Elstree Studios outside London.
I know it's not very pleasant, R2, but we have to show the Death Star. Of course I care about upsetting a fellow droid, but we can't stop now. We must get on with our journey aboard the Millennium Falcon.
The Falcon, in which the intrepid adventurers are traveling, is in fact a model. Designed and built by a Hollywood special effects house, it is photographed by a computer-controlled camera. By photographing the model against a blue screen, it will later be possible to add different backgrounds and other moving objects to the scene. This can be done by means of double and triple exposures. The work is painstaking and precise. It is an endeavor where details count.
When you look at the Millennium Falcon, the concept model wasn't anything like it became.
The Falcon started out as the blockade runner. We finished it, photographed, sent it to England because they had a bunch of carpenters, like 300 or 400 carpenters waiting for it. And the associate producer, Jim Nelson's like flipping out. There was a show on TV at the time in England called Space 1999. And the word was that we copied that ship. Well, I'd never seen the show, and it was coincidence that they were both long and slender, and they had an engine cluster here, and they had a cockpit up here. But that's it. And George wanted something different.
He said something, well, make the ship kind of like a hamburger, you know, the bun and the meat in the middle, like that. And then another word that he said was something like, well, I want it like a hamburger, but how about when it actually flies, it flies like a sunfish, so it's a long, narrow thing, and that's why it had that rotating cockpit. For some reason, that idea died real quickly.
There was a mad rush. We had to get this thing done in like a few weeks so that we wouldn't keep these people waiting in England. And we had everybody in this, the camera guys dropped their work, they were making parts, and then they brought it to us and we just put stuff on it. But in a way that Joe Johnston wanted, and it had to look mechanical. And that ship was built really, really quickly and became iconic. Who would have known?
In Colin Cantwell's original concept model, of course, it has the long nose, just like the real X-Wing had. But we were also amused that the body of that is actually a dragster body. That's what makes that long nose. His models were kind of lightweight, not as swarthy, not as strong looking. So we took some of the ideas, which I think was originally Ralph McQuarrie's idea. He had a small X-Wing in a painting. And George had this idea of a used universe. I remember the idea came down from him. And he didn't want anything too slick or too well painted. Or it also needed to look aged. And also boilerplate technology. Everything had to look like it had been riveted together, assembled, rather than just a slick mono shape. We changed quite a bit from the concepts for the X-Wing, and one of the reasons was to make it look stronger, but also it had to contain motors for the ship to go into an X. We carved it out of wood. We didn't always do that, but that particular case we did. It also had a lot of tank parts, and all along the backside where the engine is and the back end and that kind of thing it was really well and completely detailed. But the X-Wing, became a very, very important model. There was a lot of emphasis on the X-Wings.
They could use a good pilot like you. You're turning your back on them.
What good's the reward if you ain't around to use it? Besides, attacking that battle station ain't my idea of courage. It's more like suicide.
Y-Wing was featured in some of Ralph McQuarrie's early concept illustrations, kind of harkens back to the P-38, you know, the two-fuselage fighter plane of World War II. I think the Y-Wing particularly is an interesting idea, an interesting ship. It reminded me a little bit of a 57 Thunderbird. It had kind of a sleekness to it. As we worked on it and added details to it, it took on more of a kind of a cobbled-together hot rod look. We had a lot of freedom in interpreting the concept models, and a lot of the time the direction that they took was determined more by the kind of parts that we could find to build them. Like I remember the front of the rocket engine was actually a legs container. That was a plastic container for a hose that we could just get at a drugstore. All the smaller fighter models had to be produced and molded in foam to make explosion versions of them. That's a bit more difficult and time consuming to make sure that every detail that's put on there could be pulled out of a mold.
Here they come.
The concept for the TIE Fighter is much more spindly. You can see that little round shape has no real detail on it, just a little ball, and the rods and the wings are very lightweight and thin. The final TIE Fighter also changed radically for color. The bad guys all had this kind of a dark military blue battleship color, and the good guys were a little bit lighter value. On the TIE Fighter we did kit bashing, but there's so many shapes. The multi-spoke thing on the wheel, the ball that isn't totally a ball that goes off into a more of a hexagonal side pieces, all of those had to be carved individually. They weren't kit bashed. The kit bashing part of it is the little tiny little details, and we knew that since you had a key light, a la the sun, it would create all these little hard shapes, hard little lines and everything on the shadows. They do have a certain amount of bashed kits in there, but the bulk of it is carved in wood or plastic and then molded. You can definitely tell Darth Vader's ship because it doesn't have those big long wings up the side. You know, it's more condensed. The cockpit is exactly the same, or at least almost exactly the same, but the wings were just made different, so you definitely knew which ship Darth Vader was in when it appeared on the screen.
Stay in attack formation.
At the very beginning, we didn't think like there'll be a special TIE Fighter for Darth Vader, but they knew they set them out in space and they're flying around. Well, who's who? You know, what do you put a big sign on it that says this is Darth Vader's ship, or you know, how do you do that? Because even when you go in for a close-up on the face, and then when you go to a far-away shot, if all the TIE Fighters are exactly the same, you know, which one is he?
I have you now.
Curiously enough, there was even a drawing that was called a double cockpit TIE Fighter that was similar to Darth's. And we nicknamed that the double chili tie because there was a place you could get chili dogs near where we worked. In the original of the Star Destroyer, Ralph McQuarrie was the one that did this little triangular thing, maybe about 1.5 inches long, that was in one drawing, incidentally. And George really liked that idea. And then he hired a model maker. This was before there ever was an ILM, that they made these concept models.
You know, it was really fun to build because a lot of the uncertainties about what it was, like the proportions of it and the shape and all that stuff, was pretty well nailed down.
One of the things that was very important was to try and transmit to people what the scale of the thing really was, how big it was. And we knew that the way that when you fly over a city, you tell the difference between flying over Poughkeepsie, Illinois and Los Angeles is by how many lights there are. And we put tens of thousands of fiber optics in that particular ship. And fiber optics allow you to have this little tiny little pinpoint of light. We had a light source on the inside of it, was a projection lamp, and then it went out to travel down all of these fiber optics to different pinpoints on the ship.
There was a tungsten halogen bulbs that were inside the ship, which are very hot and require cooling, and there was a compressed air system to cool those off. It was like a little miniature nuclear reactor out there on the stage.
We tried to transmit scale to people on all the ships. It was like big ships have hundreds of thousands of lights. Little ships have 1 or 2 or 3 or 5, So right from the beginning, you'd say, this is really a big ship because it has lots of lights on it. The Darth Vader Star Destroyer, the original idea to save money was to just take the regular white Star Destroyer and paint it blue. From a model maker's point of view, the problem with that is it had tens of thousands of little fiber optics that we would have to scrape to get the lights exposed. And also we knew that just because they tell you that they're through shooting the white Star Destroyer, it doesn't mean they really are. Joe Johnston started drawing that really long, narrow arrow is really what it looks like. We were going to make this whole new Darth Vader ship, which was called eventually the Executor, but to make it be really huge, we needed to have more lights. So if the 8-foot white Star Destroyer had about 100,000 lights, Darth Vader's ship then, since it was so much bigger, had to have many more lights. We couldn't use fiber optics because we were already reaching the max at around 100,000 fiber optics. So what we did was doing artwork and then etching into brass these little tiny holes. We could draw up one panel, reduce it down, count how many lights would be per inch, and we eventually came up with around 250,000 lights. So you just knew that this is really, really big. Both with that ship and the white Star Destroyer, they were big, and people would sit around and they'd work on this section. And then I'd say every 4 hours or something, I'd say, well, move 2 feet, and have somebody else rotate so that you wouldn't get one person's style that would dominate only in one area, and then somebody else's style that would develop in another area. But we worked 7 days a week for about 7 weeks to do that.
Scenes filmed on the London sound stages will also be integrated with the model shots made in California. To achieve this, the actors must also be filmed against a blue screen.
Tell anybody about us.
In the Falcon cockpit, the actors play out their terror at being caught in a magnetic pull exerted by a yet unpictured Death Star.
It's too big for a space station.
I have a very bad feeling about this.
Turn the ship around.
Yeah, I think you're right. Full reverse, Chewie!
In order to complete the scene, it is necessary to generate what the special effects people call mats.
It's pulling us in.
They permit the separate elements to be printed one at a time. In this case, the actors, the graphic of the Death Star, and a star field. When finally combined, the star field, the Death Star graphic, the model, and the actors filmed on stage contribute to the creation of a dramatic sequence.
Colin Cantwell's original concept model for the Death Star, it's silver, and it has these little doodads. We eventually knew that it ruins the scale of things to make them shiny, especially silver. It wouldn't look very good. It was just the most rudimentary object, that's concept models. And do you know that they were used with George to go to the studios to have something visual to talk about, to say, well, there'll be an X-Wing, and it will have a fight battle with this, and this will be the Death Star, and all that kind of stuff. So to somehow convince studios that this is a reasonable idea, a reasonable project that he wants to do. For the most part, they were matte paintings. There was a matte painting of the Death Star for the first Star Wars New Hope. When we were doing the Death Star surface, the laser tower that was a part of the concept art that Joe Johnston and Ralph McQuarrie were doing, we created them in a couple of different sizes, the small size and the bigger size. But when you want to do a close-up, you can't close in on a model that's this big and have it fill up the full screen. And that's when we build the big model, you get in close to that laser tower.
We didn't use a lot of reference for building these things. It was, I think, most of the model makers for Star Wars considered that there's a kind of a mechanical aesthetic that we all appreciated and tried to put into the models, that a certain arrangement of exhaust pipes looked cool. A large barrel with cooling rods and ammo packets can just be arranged in a way that sculpturally and aesthetically looks interesting and fun.
The surface of the Death Star, until now seen only as a graphic, must now be rendered as a model. To effect attacks on the model by the rebel planes, explosions are sometimes triggered by primitive mechanisms. Similarly, the miniature planes are wired with small charges. It took 2 years and $3.5 million to do the Star Wars miniature and optical effects. This camera provides a pilot's eye view of an attack on the Death Star. Thousands of hours are devoted to collecting all the elements necessary for the final sequence.
Hi, I'm Don Bees, and this is R2-D2, and this is the Lucasfilm Archives. We have here all the original movie costumes, props, and models from the Star Wars movies. We'd like to take you on a tour. This is Darth Vader from the Star Wars films. Darth Vader was played by David Prowse, an actor from England, and his voice was done by James Earl Jones. If you look closely on the chest plate, you can see that Hebrew lettering underneath the 3 coin slots that are on the right side of the chest plate. This is Han Solo in carbonite used in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. The face is a casting of the actor Harrison Ford. The rest is someone else's body and hands. Chewbacca the Wookie was played by an actor named Peter Mayhew, who's 7'2". The gold insect droid from Star Wars, and there's a Jawa at his feet. R2-D2, C-3PO, and a stormtrooper from the Star Wars movies. There were many R2-D2s used to make one character from the films. These are some of those. R2-D2 was sometimes played by a man in a suit named Kenny Baker. Luke's Landspeeder from Star Wars. This was an actual car that was ridden. The miniature Landspeeder was used for long-distance shots. They gave the impression of the Landspeeder floating by putting mirrors underneath the fuselage of the ship. The Imperial speeder bike used in Return of the Jedi. At times it was doubled by a miniature speeder bike with a puppet representing the different characters sitting on it. The TIE Interceptor from Return of the Jedi, along with some miniature TIE Interceptors. The TIE Fighter from Star Wars. As you can see, Vader's TIE Fighter from Star Wars. This is the double chili TIE bomber. It was used in Empire Strikes Back. It was called the double chili TIE bomber because it looked like a pair of chili burritos side by side. The Rebel X-Wing fighter, complete with R2-D2 in the back. Boba Fett's Slave One. The ship was inspired by a street light post. The Y-Wing. The Snowspeeder. Both Rebel crafts. A miniature pilot from the Rebel Snowspeeder. This is the probe droid that found the rebels on the ice planet Hoth. The generator on the ice planet. The Millennium Falcon. This is a large 4-foot version of the model that was built for Star Wars. You can see the corner of the smaller 6-inch model that was built for Empire Strikes Back. The ship was also built full-size in England by a shipbuilding firm in Wales. That's the thermal detonator that Princess Leia threatens to blow up Jabba the Hutt with. The Rebel blaster. Imperial Stormtrooper blaster. Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. Darth Vader's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. The Tusken Raider and his gaffy stick from Star Wars. The three helmets here are two Imperial helmets and Luke's X-Wing helmet from Star Wars. This is the Imperial Beetle helmet, Luke's X-Wing helmet, and the Imperial Guard helmet from Return of the Jedi. Three bad guys helmets from Star Wars movies. The Stormtrooper, the Snowtrooper from Empire Strikes Back, and of course Darth Vader from all three Star Wars films. C-3PO's mask from all three Star Wars films. An Imperial controller helmet from Star Wars. And Luke's Rebel helmet that he used on the Imperial speeder bike, seen here in the miniature. This is a prototype for the Tauntaun, the creature that Luke and Han rode in Empire Strikes Back. And this is a stop-motion version of the Tauntaun. These are miniature figures used on the sand skiff when the rebels escaped from Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi. The Jawa Sandcrawler from Star Wars. This is a radio-controlled model that was filmed in the deserts of Southern California. The different versions of the Millennium Falcon. The Imperial Shuttle from Return of the Jedi. Two different versions. This is one of the creatures from Jabba's palace. This is Bubo. And that's Jabba himself. It's actually a half-scale Jabba. Boba Fett from Empire and Jedi. This is the cockpit dashboard of the land speeder. Jabba's sail barge from Return of the Jedi. This was built full size in Yuma, Arizona. The Wampa ice creature from Empire Strikes Back. The road creature from Return of the Jedi. He was sitting outside of Jabba's palace and snatched up a crawling insect. These are some of the various creatures that were in the background of Jabba's palace. Some of the various characters from the Jabba the Hutt scene were named Starfish, Klaatu, Barada, and Nikto, the lines that were used from The Day the Earth Stood Still, Queequeg from Moby Dick, Woof, Hermiodal, Efant Man, 66, Hoover. That's Chewbacca's son from the 1978 Star Wars Holiday Special. That's Yak Face from Return of the Jedi. The Rancor from Return of the Jedi. Yoda from Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. These are laser cannons from the Death Star. Early prototypes for different Star Wars ships, the TIE Fighter and the Star Destroyer. That's Darth Vader's damaged wing from Star Wars. And various other crafts in different scales. The ship in the case is the prototype X-Wing from Star Wars, and the ship on top of the case is the Y-Wing prototype from Star Wars. Another cannon from Star Wars. Darth Vader's mask that was used for the scene where his mask was taken off by Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi. We hope you've enjoyed this special look at some of the elements that help create the magic of the Star Wars universe. R2, shall we?
Action! No.
Keep moving down, fellas, quickly. Do the doors.
Commander Leavesden.
This ship carries the crest of Alderaan. Was there any of the royal family on board? Who were you carrying?
16, take 9. And action!
Where is the data you intercepted? What have you done with those information tapes?
We intercepted no information. This is a consular ship, didn't you see the markings? We're on a diplomatic mission.
Where are those tapes?
Only the commander knows that.
This ship carries the crest of Alderaan. Was there any of the royal family on board? Who were you carrying?
412, take 2. Oh. 3 cameras. Alright. Action. John!
'82, take 5.
Action.
Well, there we are. Mos Eisley's spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
I'm ready for anything.
211, take 3, guide track. Action! Plate 228, take 6. And action.
Yeah, I was just on the way to see your boss. Tell Jabba I've got his money.
That's what you said yesterday. But it's too late. I'm not going back to Jabba with another one of your stories.
Yes, but this time I've got the money.
Then I'll take it now.
I don't have it with me. Tell Jabba
It's too late, I think. Jabba would rather have your ship.
over my dead body.
That's the idea, Solo. Now you will come outside with me. Or must I finish it in here?
I don't think they'd like another killing in here.
They'd hardly notice. Get up. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yes, I'll bet you have.
Okay, cut. Okay, that was great. Say 228, take 7, pick up. Turn it up. Action.
I don't think they'd like another killing in here.
They'd hardly notice. Get up. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yes, I'll bet you have.
Here's where the fun begins.
Well? How long?
626, take 2, 2 cameras. Okay, action!
And go.
Keep going, clear the corridor! Now. Jack! Keep in the doorway! 106, take 4. Action.
That old man is mad.
You said it, Chewie. Boy, where'd you dig up that old fossil?
Yeah, great at getting us into trouble.
I didn't hear you give any ideas. Look, a minute ago
you said you didn't want to just wait here and be captured. Now all you want to do is stay?
Marching into the detention area is not what I had in mind.
But they're gonna kill her!
Better her than me.
No, hon. I've seen her. She's so beautiful.
So is life.
Take 263, take 2. And action!
There she is.
C-3PO, do you copy?
I'll read you, sir.
Are you safe?
For the moment, we're in the hangar across from the ship.
We're right above you. Stand by.
You came in that thing? Oh, God, you're braver than I thought.
Nice. Come on.
And action!
Get back to the ship! Where are you going? Come back!
Let's do one thing for him. He certainly has courage.
Great! What good is it going to do us if he gets himself killed? Come on.
Take 271, take 3, pick up. 2 cameras. Go. In you go, fine. Right, smoke up. Too much. Let it dive in. And action!
Here they come. For luck. We're gonna need it.
478, take 1. Is this sync, Pete? Yes. And action.
Your powers are weak, old man. You should not come back.
You can't win, Darth. If my blade should find its mark, you will cease to exist. And I warn you, if you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
7, take 1. 3 cameras. Good luck. Right. Action! Take 468, take 3. 2 cameras. Action!
No!
Take 469, take 1. 3 cameras. And action!
No!
Take 469, take 1. 3 cameras. And action!
No! Come on!
Huh?
You can start with that earphone down.
Yeah.
Line. Action.
You!
Glad you were here to see it. Now let's get some distance before that thing goes... Now let's get some distance before that thing goes supernova. How do you pronounce supernova? What inflection? Supernova or supernova?
Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million.
When you watch the movies, you can tell that they were made by people who really cared about what they were doing.
secret. Sometimes we have movie stars on this show who in private will admit they don't like the movie too much. These guys watch that with such... You like this movie, don't you?
I love it. I love it.
You said what? Those cuts were so good.
Well, I mean, the way the film is put together, I really enjoy.
Is this as good as the first?
I'm mostly excited because you see a real growth in the characters. I chose to play Luke in the first one in a specific, very innocent, very young style, so there would be a contrast, and I really feel that my character's paying off now, and then you will see a different set of characters in the third one because there is a progression.
You said you signed a contract 4 years ago to do the 3 films. Given that Star Wars was the biggest moneymaker of all time, made a fortune, are you guys being compensated better this time than you were for the first film?
It really made a lot of money?
A fortune.
Oh. Wow.
Well, these are dollar bills coming out of it. No, are you doing better now?
No, we are. We have been more than justly treated by George Lucas.
Don't hear that too often.
Right. Well, the nice thing was that he made it a gift so that you don't have a lot of unhappiness.
Is it a secret which of the two of you wins the love of Princess Leia?
I think it's best to keep as many surprises as possible. It's like your sister telling you what you're getting for Christmas. You have to fake that surprise. Oh boy, a new bike.
I was surprised. And congratulations to the lucky man. You'll have to find out which one it was for yourself.
Your Highnessness?
I thought you were decided to stay.
Well, the bounty hunter we met on Lord Mendel changed my mind.
Does Luke know?
He'll know when he gets back. Don't look at me like that. More Jabba's bounty hunters after me every day. If I don't get this price off my head while I still have one.
Han, we need.
We need?
Yes.
What about you need?
Aesthetically, it's a very different movie. It's a much more dramatic film, and it's much more of a tragedy, which is a large shift. It's still got a lot of humor in it, got its funny moments, but essentially its story is developing, and therefore the characters are becoming more serious.
I don't know what he's saying. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I do hope he's all dead, if you see what I mean. It's most unfortunate that Master Luke got short-circuit.
Commander Skywalker has been ill and Dormishak, but is responding well to the Bacta. He is presently out of danger.
Thank the Maker.
Cut, cut, cut. All right, no good. Let's do it again. It's almost unreal. Nothing grows here. It's a glacier. It's north. The weather's bad, which is what we want. And it looks like another planet.
It's much more of a fantasy than it is a science fiction film, which is done really to give it more fairy tale-like, make-believe quality.
The inanimate miniature Tauntaun was put in motion by the then bearded Phil Tippett. He helped bring Star Wars creatures to life by photographing them one frame at a time. making slight adjustments of the creature before each shot.
The Tauntauns and the Walkers were the two first things that got the stop motion department up and running on Empire, making things that you could not produce any other way, and making articulated models of strange creatures, putting them in photographic backgrounds, and trying as hard as you could to make it appear as though those performances that were shot one frame at a time had the same mass and weight and lighting effects as the photographic backgrounds that your live characters are in. I just did a whole bunch of 8 or 10 drawings, and then I did like a little clay maquette of one of the drawings with a little rider on the back of it, which was my best guess. We brought that up to George, and he said, well, this looks like a good one. And that was the idea. It was just a thing that got people from A to B that just helped kind of flesh out the reality of the snow landscape of Hoth. If you have a shot that requires the Tauntaun to take a breath, fall down, do a death rattle, and a final breath, each of these moments, you just scale them. So it's like a 4-second shot, and something like that could easily take 6 to 8 hours to shoot, because you got to make sure that you're trying to register everything very carefully, and you can't kick any of the lights. If you kick any of the lights, then you have to start the shot over. They're literally sculpting in space and time.
Leia, I have to go away for a while.
What? Where are you going?
To another system. It's not far from here.
That's great. That's just great. Why doesn't everybody just take off?
What are you talking about?
First Han, now you. When am I going to learn not to count on anyone but myself?
I didn't know he was leaving.
You know, I was getting along fine before I met you two moon jockeys.
Calm down. Tell me about Han.
Oh, he's got to pay off that criminal he's in hock to.
Jabba the Hutt.
You know, I could get more loyalty if I went down the hall and recruited some of those ice creatures.
Ice creatures? Here?
Oh, yes, sir. But they're being tracked rather cleverly.
Hey, you kid!
You don't look so bad to me. In fact, he looks pretty good. You look strong enough to pull the ears off a Gondark.
Thanks to you.
That's 2, Yomi Jr. Well, your worship.
I think it's going to look very different, and I think it's going to be a much different film, really.
The original design for the walkers came from a piece of artwork that Sid Mead had done that was an ad for a big corporation.
Joe talked to him about basing his design on Sid Mead's work, and Sid was fine with that. It wasn't a direct copy, it was just inspiration.
I saw some of the early designs for it. It was always the 4 legs, but it didn't originally have the head on it, and the legs were farther apart, and it just was kind of this bulky sort of thing. And at some point in there, it became more dog-like, and so you could relate to it subconsciously. It sort of had a head, which is where the control guys kind of were, which makes no sense. Why weren't they in the actual thing? It didn't have a tail, but it had the 4 legs that were put together, tighter so the hips weren't as wide apart, and you could really recognize it then and kind of relate to it. And it was just a great design.
They had electric clutches in the joints so they could trigger the legs to collapse on cue. The thing got to be so heavy, like the electric clutches just wouldn't hold up and fire on cue. We ended up hanging the guy from a rope, released a rope and pulled him down with the smaller cable. He had little explosions going on throughout the bodywork, and it just looked great. It had tremendous mass. The way it fell, you believed it was 100 tons.
Stand by, Dak.
Well, the rebels used the speeder to take down the snow walkers, the giant AT-ATs. And what they would do is fly around the legs, ejecting a cable so they could tie up the legs and trip the walkers. We built several. One was a pyro model that would crash into the snow and blow up. It was a very small model, maybe a foot long, and to make it look like, a 20-foot long aircraft was a real trick. My role was to animate the air brakes, the flaps on the back. As the animated flaps would move, of course, the ship would bank and turn. We animated the pilots so they would go around, look where they're flying. The day we did the pyro shot, it was such an impressive shot. After doing a few tests, everybody knew this was going to be spectacular. The entire company was on a balcony overlooking the stage, and our manager came in and looked around and said, "Oh my God, this is costing me $1,000 a minute to have all these people watching." I mean, there was literally nobody working. Everybody was waiting for that shot.
Something as large as Star Wars, which is a very, very complicated kind of movie, it really needs a lot of people all working together to make it happen. At least 40 or 50 people intimately involved on the creative level, between the screenplay and the directing and the special effects and the sound and the music and just the overall productions. A lot of people make a significant contribution.
The fictional Sarlacc resided in the desert waste of the twin sun planet of Tatooine. Actually, it was part of an extraordinary outdoor set built in the Buttercup Valley near Yuma, Arizona.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Where are you guys from?
San Diego.
And what'd you do? You drove here? Why'd you drive here?
We wanted to see this. Seeing this part of it filmed, and there's all of the props around, and there's people lying on the ground, and it's all cruddy. But you know that they're going to take it back and put in the opticals, and it's going to be totally different.
I mean,
so
we're
all
in Tatooine right now, so that's terrific, you know.
Jabba's 60-foot-high, fully rigged anti-gravity sail barge would loom over the execution of Luke Skywalker's crew.
And there are numerous pieces of greebly, which is an English term for dressing on the barge, aircraft pieces that are made to look into a kind of a space configuration.
It was a slave costume. It was supposed to be skimpy. The reason it was a costume like that is George said, we want to show that Princess Leia is growing up. So those 3 episodes spanned a certain amount of time. So she got more mature, and that's why the slave costume was introduced. And the fans also were getting more mature, supposedly, and 15 or 20 years later, a lot of people would come up to me and say, "You made the Princess Leia costume. Wow, that was the best thing I ever saw when I was a kid." I had a sculpture of my own style that I had developed. I took one of these to show to the art director, Nilo Rodas, and immediately he felt like I had a handle on something. When I did show George the finished costume, he's looking at it and looking at it and looking at it, then he turns around and walks away, and the art director goes with him. And I thought, well, that's the end of that one, you know. I guess he really hated it. But in about 5 minutes, the art director came back and he said, he loves it, he loves it. And I said, but he didn't say anything. He said, well, that's why we know he loves it. Eventually, we cast it in the flimsy or soft material, so that when she wore it, it would flex. However, she still didn't like it. I don't blame her, because wearing something like this, I did put leather on the back of it to help it feel better. The problem was, I made the costume according to her proportions before the movie. Then they went off to shoot the film in England. A month or 2 later, they came back, and then they were going to put the costume on her. And when that happened, she must have lost 10 pounds, if not more. So the costume really hung on her. Most people probably didn't notice it, but I noticed it, and that's what happens when you have things that stay around for a very long time.
Come on, we got to get out of here quick.
There was a matte painting of the Death Star, and they could kind of move in and move out, but you can't really move much on a matte painting because it's flat artwork. And George Lucas asks, he says, hey, what do you think we build the incomplete Death Star as a model? We can really move on it that way. production would talk to me and go like, you know, well, we could do it. Don't emphasize the model. You know, we could do it with the painting because we don't want another big budget, model made. So George says to me specifically, says, Lauren, what do you think it's going to cost for that if we did it as a full size model? And I had known that he had bought a Dino Ferrari, a used one. I knew exactly how much he had paid for it, and I said, it'll cost about as much, a little bit more than the Dino Ferrari that you bought. And he said, is that all? Let's do it. I knew that George had already made the decision. They weren't going to be able to change his mind now, and we went ahead and built it. We knew from the drawings that it had to look like miniature iron girders and all kinds of wire structure and everything was used to put it together so that the inside had a structure. You couldn't just cut it away and say it was just a shell. That wouldn't be a good payoff.
The pieces that were under construction had been cut out, and what was next was all the little teeny filigree detail that represented the girders and the under construction area. One of the ideas that Lorne had, which we ended up using, was to use acid-etched brass for a lot of that fine filigree detail. We had this piece of artwork that we were using to design it, and then we were told, actually, this is flopped, this is backwards, so we're going to have to flop the model. So if you ever see the model in person, it is exactly the opposite of the way it appeared in the film.
Some creatures inhabit our dreams and nightmares. Some come to us directly from the movies, like this character, Salacious Crumb.
Unlike the movie monsters and creatures of yesterday, today's species can walk, talk, and blink their eyes, and even wiggle their noses.
With so many roles in the movies being played by creatures, it was necessary for the creatures to be able to act. Off-camera technicians, viewing the actor's performance on video, help the characterization with an eye blink here, a raised eyebrow there.
Some monsters, sometimes the most ferocious of them, are simply hand puppets, like the Rancor in Return of the Jedi. A metal skeleton was constructed and then covered with the latex skin. Before painting, remote control elements were implanted to make it possible for the creature's fingers to grasp his prey. The hand puppet head completed the creature.
I feel my heart pumping. Ooh, my whole
Lucas instructed that the vocalist have her own number. Composer John Williams wrote the music. His son Joseph wrote the lyrics. Miss Snooty is a complex combination of rod puppet and marionette.
How do you have a meaningful relationship with a 3-ton slug?
That's the thing. He doesn't pretend to be anything else. He doesn't feel the need to be charming or anything. He's just an unpretentious, very straightforward guy. And I love him.
I mean, he's based on all the sort of evil sultan-like characters.
With the final design approved, the task of building Jabba fell to Stuart Freeborn at the London studio. Freeborn, who also built Yoda, considers Jabba his greatest creation. One of the largest problems was baking the clay mold for Jabba's skin. An entire room had to be transformed into a giant Jabba bakery, the mirror to his evil soul, and one of the keys to making his performance come alive. Fully developed, 3-dimensional being. Jabba took his place center stage with the other actors. 6 different people operate Jabba from 6 different vantage points. They must each do different things, yet do them together.
In the Star Wars movies, we actors have had to work alongside the bad, the ugly, the cute, and the cuddly.
You know, the magic of the movies in Star Wars is people. What they do on the screen and what they did to get it there. It's the magic of the designers, creators, and builders of our favorite movie monsters. It's the magic of the operators and the actors, like Toby Philpott, David Barclay, and Mike Edmonds, of Tim Rose, of Little Warwick Davis, of Frank Oz, of Peter Mayhew, of Kenny Baker, and Anthony Daniels.
Star Wars is the land of the Ewok, the Wookiee, Yoda, Jabba, and C-3PO.
I came up with the idea of General Grievous as a leader of the droid armies. He's kind of a little bit of an alien in a droid shell, which is sort of an echo of what Anakin is going to become.
You must realize you are doomed. Back away! I will deal with this Jedi slime myself. I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku.
So this is the burnt Anakin stroke Vader makeup on Hayden Christensen, and this is what's going to bridge the transformation between Anakin and Darth Vader.
My God!
Look at this.
Oh, God!
What's really freaky is that your eyebrows and your eyes, that you're in there.
So what?
Particularly nice.
That's a scene all the fans are waiting for.
Yeah.
For him to come out of that pit looking like this.
Yeah.
Another prosthetic was, it was my first time, having to, be burned.
Slide down this way, keep coming down, and then you're going to put your feet up here. Yeah, up there on that. Set. And action! We know from Return of the Jedi what he looks like, so we use that as our model, that he's been all burned up in a volcano. And that was in, say, the original backstory. I felt it was important that we actually see that happen so that we could see the consequences of these bad things that he did.
I'm aware that there was a fair amount of hysteria on set when I first emerged as Darth Vader.
You look just like Darth Vader. On Empire Strikes Back, we had to do little cartoons of the walkers walking and the explosions and stuff. Return of the Jedi, we built little models and we took a video camera and we shot little videos of these little models on sticks going through the frame. And when we finally got to Phantom Menace, we were able to actually use digital animation to do our videomatics in a more sophisticated way. You know, we're pushing the envelope in a few places, but the biggest issue is volume. Yeah, I mean, just the amount of stuff.
Yes.
And of course, that's the part that creates the world. Jar Jar is a key to all this. If we get Jar Jar working.
The big grass planet battle there, the zillions of creatures. You know, we don't have a real good way of doing that right now.
The whole thing is how are you going to top the pod race? Yeah, because it's pretty intense. The thing is that we can top the pod race with this incredible Jedi battle that we've always heard about in the last 3 movies but never really got to see. And then that with Anakin, you know, kind of duplicating the Luke Skywalker role, but you see the echo of where it all is going to go. And instead of destroying the Death Star, he destroys the ship that controls the robots. Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme. Every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
Be something like that.
And that looks pretty good.
Right now we got a actual leg, got a thigh, a calf, and a foot getting ready to go to England.
He's getting kind of quick at this, and
Yes,
he's
he
been
is.
practicing. Wow! Yeah, you're signed, buddy. We're very proud of you, Jake.
And
handwriting too. Very good, Jake.
What's it been like? You've been telling all your friends you're leaving for Star Wars, huh?
The only thing I said was I'm going away for the summer to film Star Wars. And then all these hands raised up for questions.
Do you know how much money they're going to spend to make this movie?
Probably over $50,000.
They're definitely going to spend $50,000.
We've taken over the Rolls-Royce factory, which has about 850,000 square feet, and we converted it into stage space. Right now we have 600 people working for us. We're building sets on 3 shifts, 24 hours a day.
Just one of our battle droids, actually.
Oh,
look at this. This is the new Stormtrooper.
Oh,
This is our new Stormtrooper.
But in a way, he's the old model, replaced by Star Wars being the new Stormtrooper.
Yeah, because what you don't realize is that these guys really aren't very efficient. You know, Jedi cut them down like they're butter, and they really are pretty useless. How can we manage to change the operating procedures in a way that we can completely revolutionize the way we make movies so that this is all doable? Because it's not just that we have to do it for this picture, we have to do it for 2 more pictures, and also if this picture works, then everybody also want it done for their picture. Nobody can afford to do it at these prices.
Yeah.
That's my son Jet.
Hi, Jet.
That's Janie, her
Hi.
assistant.
How are you? All right.
And your name?
Ewan.
Ewan. Nice to meet you. Who are you going to be in the movie? Are you
The young Obi-Wan, I think.
Yeah.
I hope.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to buzz his hair just like yours.
Quite like that length.
It's nice that it stands up.
Will it just be braided at the top part?
I sort of think it's better if it's braided all the way down. In essence, it's a symbol of a learner. It's got to have, you know, when we wrap the bottom of it, if we do wrap it, we could wrap it actually in little colored threads. There's got to be some significance in maybe that wrapping of how many years where you are in the training process.
Yeah.
One more than lunch, huh? One more with feeling. Let's extend that, Just be careful, because if they turn on when you're doing this.
Jedi.
This is it.
This is it, the beginning.
Always 2 there are. No more, no less. A master and an apprentice.
But which one was destroyed? Master or the apprentice?
Star Wars: The Beginning. This is an HHB Portat, DT1000, 48 kilohertz, camera running 24 frames a second.
All right, we're going to get that shot ready now. Crowd on the platform, move on. Thank you.
I mean, what you could reset it.
Good. Good morning. How are you? Look good today?
Good luck, everybody. Now let's kick ass. 77, take 1.
And action.
Everything is going as planned. The Republic will soon be in my control.
Ready, and action.
It's an all pretty optimized.
Don't look at me.
So
So what we're doing now is you on this level. Right,
Oh, no, have I just grabbed
you
onto
grabbed onto it. Oh, right.
Come on, Mark. And okay, cut. Cut it. The problem with doing it that way, guys, is you can actually see that he bounces on something.
Get your feet on there, now.
Here we go.
166 Echo, take 5 A&B cameras. Come on, Mark. And action.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, great. Cut. Break that. Good.
Take more time with that elbow. Hop.
Yeah, don't make it so
Planting. Back. Yeah, good. Nice, that was that.
Quiet, please.
That's good there.
And action.
Do you want to do Star Wars? They said, I said, too fucking right. Put his air back in, please.
I feel there's more to this, my master. The two Jedi may be using the Queen for their own purposes.
The main things here are we have the walking hologram generator, which will be added in computer graphics, but it's in front of everybody who's walking. We have a map painting of Theed City to put back there, and the light fixtures on the wall in the hallway are not what George wants, so we're going to replace them with something else. When the camera pans over to look out this archway, we want to have filled that archway full of tanks and battle droids.
See ya. Sugar. Na 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 na. How you doing? It was too hot yesterday.
They said it gets hotter than that.
Yeah. This is Suicide Fortnite.
The trick part of this is going to be the most difficult one to do. He won't be here, and neither will Saboba.
Well, this one then I'll just move in. Huh?
Yeah, well...
Okay.
Okay, then.
Last night. They were 75-mile-an-hour winds.
It's just incredible. It's like 4 months work.
This is what digital technology is for. It's a tool.
There it is.
Wow, look at that.
I know, that one's...
The engine sets, look at that. This is fucking grim.
Yeah.
We have Anakin. These are his engines, which play the most crucial part in the movie.
Right.
They're split in two, which doesn't look good. And then this is the scumbag of the universe, and his engines are completely fucked. Yeah, this is heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
Thank God this beauty's okay, though.
Okay, understood.
That's amazing that one is the only one that really survived.
Yeah.
It's the Force.
Exact same thing happened on Star Wars. It's always something.
Ready, Bernie? Thank you.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay, you're coming up on Sebulba. Sebulba's ahead of you there. You see him, he's maneuvering, he's flaming. He's exploded somebody in front of you. You're coming alongside him, Jake. He's on your left now. Look at him. You're going to beat him, Jake. But he's not going to play fair. He's going to bump you. Bump! Bang! Fist push your head. Duck!
And cut.
Okay, Jake Lloyd is finished. Thank you, Jake.
In a few months, we'll come back. We'll have some more fun.
Yeah, okay, you look after yourself, Jake.
It's the last day of principal photography. 1 team.
Yokoto Banta Pudu.
But you could put a little laugh on the end of that one.
Yeah, Jabba.
SB 309, 310, take 2.
Yokoto Banta Pudu.
All right, that was good. We'll try one more with a little bit more anger.
Yokoto Banta Pudu.
Yeah.
SB 309, 310, take 3.
Yokoto Banta Pudu.
Okay, that's good for me.
Okay.
Confer on you the level of Jedi Knight. The Council does. But agree with your taking this boy as your Padawan learner, I do not. Qui-Gon's defiance I sense in you. Need that you do not. Agree with you, the Council does. Your apprentice, young Skywalker, will be.
And roll camera.
Where's number 2 going, dude?
Number 2, just poke it up through the cockpit. Go ahead and pull it back. Roll camera. Speed! Fire!
The only concern that one might have is that you may want a version without the chorus, but I don't know if you even want to contemplate that.
I love the chorus.
It gives it that churchy.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's going to work. I mean, you didn't realize this, but it really goes into the third film very well, and I think it'll be an important thing to reprise. I mean, that definitely has the quality of the inevitable fate of doom. When Sebulba comes right up behind Anakin, it's almost like the Sebulba sound should be, I mean, it can go up and down, but it should always be there. Now it's there when you see it, it's not there when you don't. But you want to build that tension of the fact that it's right on his tail there, and if you don't hear it, you don't really get the sense that it's right there all the time, and it's going to eat him up. Yeah. You know, and if anything, that giant sound should be getting bigger and bigger during the whole thing as he's, you know, struggling to stay ahead of him.
It's a nice rhythm.
Because that's the thing that you're afraid of, is the fact that that guy's just going to push him. Yeah. You know, the engine's going to come right over and right into his head. One of the allures of going back and finishing the prequels was the fact I would get to do the Clone War. The style that I picked to tell them in is a style of a 1930s, you know, Saturday matinee serial. So the acting style, the sets, everything in these are sort of done in the 30s, in the genre of movies in the 1930s. And this one, it gets a little film noir. We have a little bit of a, you know, mystery and that sort of thing. But it's all done in that sort of era. The kind of movies that I make, which are very action-oriented, very complex visually, I really couldn't do it without some kind of pre-visualization process.
When George first writes the script, he has in his mind what the movie's going to look like. When he goes to shoot it, it's remarkable to watch him shoot because he shoots like no other director I've ever seen. He's going and getting elements. He's not getting a finished scene.
You pick up pieces of shots rather than shots as a whole. and then you construct the shot later. You're able to collect bits and pieces that go into the images separately, sometimes a year apart, and just stick them in. It's a very different way of approaching the medium. It's a way of making movies where you don't do one process and then go on to the next process. It's like you do a little of this, a little of that. It's more like cooking, and it's more like painting. You know, you paint, you move it around, you kind of thing, you paint a little bit more. You can actually create it and make it be just right, the way you want it in your mind's eye.
The speeder chase started with a one-page summary that George had typed up, so I had the basic gist of who was there and what was going on.
In order to start the process, we would take images that had an object moving across the screen right to left, up, down, going away from us, and that would show you the motion of what was happening. Ben and the assistant editors would go out into a barn with a little blue screen, and they would shoot various characters, you know, flying around in the cars.
If you'd spend as much time working on your saber skills as you do on your wit, young Padawan, you'd rival Master Yoda as a swordsman.
I thought I already did.
A sequence like the speeder chase, you really can't do it without animatics. You really need to develop videomatics to kind of tell you editorially where you're going and how long the shots are going to be and whether it's working, because it's a purely kinetic thing.
Then he cuts it together, he shows it to George, George makes his changes. As those discussions progress over a number of days, we shoot it, and then George takes it and bends it and molds it.
It gives you something to then sit down with the Videomatic guys and tell them kind of what you have in mind. And you say, well, this is right, but this is going too fast, or move it up, move it down. And then we'd take that and we'd blow it up, move it around, cut it out, change it around, and then give it back to the animatic department. They would then make a finer representation of that until we got the shots the way we wanted them.
We take that film, we bring it on the set, and we're able to put huge plasma screens in front of the speeder so the actors can actually watch. They can understand and interact with what's going on.
Which I think helped a lot, because otherwise you'd be directing a scene like that by yelling through a bullhorn.
It's easier just to show them the film, and they react to it as if they were in it. The kinetic energy of the movie had picked up to the point where we were starting to get some momentum, and to stop and have dialogue at that point just didn't work. And the Droid Factory had lots of potential for an exciting sequence. First, what I did is I did some storyboards with a storyboard artist, and I put them out, and I told him the ideas of what I wanted to happen.
How does George want to frame the character? Is it a close-up or a wide shot of the space?
He'll say, I want a close-up of Padme here. I want a shot that includes this robot arm threatening Anakin.
We had a blue screen stage and a blue conveyor belt, and that was it. We shot the whole sequence in 4.5 hours with both Natalie and Hayden. We did it before lunch.
And then came back and cut that and gave it to the animatic guys. I'm very keen on using color as a main element in telling the story. The animatic process and the term of making the movie got to be very sophisticated. And one of the best examples is the Droid Factory. When you see it in blue screen, it's pretty boring and silly, you don't know what's going on. But once you get those giant stamping machines and stuff cut in there, it's very powerful. And so in that particular case, the Videomatic department made a huge difference in our ability to visualize and follow the drama of the whole sequence. The Videomatic department has become so sophisticated that you're getting almost completed shots. You know, ILM will go in and clean them up and finish them off and add the detail and make them show up so they work on a giant screen.
We're doing a lot of the paintings digitally, and it's really about creating a synthesis of painting to the camera arts to, you know, modern filmmaking.
The Clone War, basically, we bypassed storyboards altogether and went straight into animatics.
It was a huge sequence. In the movie, it has literally thousands of characters. Droids, clones, troops, ships.
Basically, we got a page that said, and all hell breaks loose.
Fans have been wondering, you know, what's that going to look like?
When I said, look, I just want some great battle shots. So I let them sort of have their own way with some of those shots, just come up with some great shots, and I'd use them. So that really inspired them. They put a lot of time and effort and creativity into it and came up with some amazingly complicated and interesting shots. We took those, started cutting them in, made some modifications. Some of them we couldn't use, some of them we could, and then we started to build other shots around those shots and to build it into a full and complete sequence. I push people a little bit farther than I think they can actually go, and then they always surprise me by getting there.
He's always trying to take things a little bit further, and that in turn makes us want to kick it up a notch, and it's kind of a brutal cycle, actually, because we are constantly trying to outdo ourselves, and George gets used to that, and so we've got to up it a notch every few months.
And then I say, well, gee, this is great. If they can get there, then I'm going to push them a little bit further and see if they can get there. Sometimes they don't make it, but almost always they do. I'm constrained by my own perception of what they can accomplish. And I've learned, especially in the digital world, that I can actually push them a lot further than I think. And it opens up my creative process, because I go, well, what if we have him do this? Very rarely do I not get what I want. You know, there are a few times when we all sit down and give up and say, you know, this is too far, too fast. But they know that eventually I'll come back to it on the next film.
There's 200 Jedi Knights who flooded into the arena, fighting on the arena ground. To create that scene, we're filming each Jedi one at a time with 2 different cameras, so we can actually take the part of that fight that we like, and then we can actually composite them all together in one big fight where there'll be 100 of them all together in one shot.
So here we go.
Here we go.
300-something shots today.
A whole reel. I can now key out the blue and then see what our characters look like when I'm first lining up the shot, so that as we pan or tilt or slide across the background, it's going to match exactly what the characters are doing. We found that it would be faster if we just split the entire arena in half and then have one crew doing the opposite direction of the other crew. And that way we can get more stuff into post faster and get those shots coming out.
Every single scene of Revenge of the Sith had at least one effect, and many shots had dozens and dozens of elements. Hundreds and hundreds of people in many different ILM departments, each of whom had one specific task. You have to understand, sometimes you'll have an artist working on a shot, a 3-second shot, for literally months at a time.
In blue screen, it's very easy to get lost. It's very easy to, you know, move the camera around, pan the camera, or dolly, or do things and not know exactly where on the fabricated set that will be there you are. So you need little markers and things in the blue screen.
There's 2,146 effect shots in the film. We animated 1,269 shots.
Most of the time for Mustafar went into developing the lava and the lava crust.
The whole set is tilted at 10 degrees, and it tilts much like a wheelbarrow, so that we can adjust the angle of it depending on how fast we want the flow.
Just as in live action, we choose lenses, camera angles, filters, lighting, and effects like smoke, all to create and capture exotic worlds like Mustafar.
What was daunting with the Mustafar sequence was actually not so much how the work was done, but the actual quantity of work.
As a compositor, we're basically the last ones in the chain. We get the elements from all different sources, like model elements, miniature elements. We get elements from second unit, people against blue screen, animation department, and we just combine it all to the final film frame.
To construct the final sound for a 1-minute section of the Mustafar sword fight, it requires work on several levels. First of all, there's just the dialogue.
1,600 grunts and groans.
Or why don't we just stand here and you can slap me silly and then you can just fit it in where you need to.
George, The next layer of sound was the Foley, which are the footsteps and the movement. And although you may not hear a lot of that consciously, it's very important to have that there to give it a naturalness. Then you get to the actual sound effects that I design. The swords really don't make sound. There's really no lava. All of that has to be given weight and credibility with the sounds.
All the sound design elements are layered together in preparation for the final mix. This takes months and months of work. Without the sound designers, the lightsabers wouldn't hum, the lava wouldn't roar, you wouldn't hear the dialogue, and the duel would be a lot less exciting.
The Obi-Wan Anakin fight is an amazing battle. I've already been knighted, if you will, Darth Vader. Darth Vader's fighting style is much more aggressive and much more brutal than Anakin's.
You underestimate my power!
Don't try it!
I think that the end fight where Anakin and Obi-Wan try to resolve their differences, Obi-Wan comes out with the better hand. But I think that's a result or, derivative of Anakin's emotions and not being able to focus them and control them, which is just, the root of Anakin's inabilities.
Got to jump down, and we could do it in two pieces. Okay. He's got to jump down, and as he comes over, he's got to cut him.
Yeah, and then you've got to go.
Then we can do the second piece where he lands and rolls down. Okay. You want to do that, or you want to have a stunt guy do that?
I'll do it if you'd like me to.
That's up to you.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's kind of rolling sideways in the dirt.
Well, if you think you'll see my face and it's worth having me do it, then
probably.
I'm happy to do it, yeah.
Don't ask me, Anakin! Said you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
And cut! You do that little turn and you look back. If we move more of it as you were going up the hill, so that if he does, when he bursts into flames and stuff, it's not like you're standing right next to him. One of the key elements in Episode 3 is that we see him actually put into the Iron Lung. The mask finally close on him, that now he's an artificial man, but we know what's inside of it. The man in the suit comes into being a more personalized character than what he was originally. It's important in the end that you see the physical transformation of Anakin into this burnt-up crisp, because that's the suffering he had to live with for the rest of his life. And I like the idea that the person you thought was the villain is really the victim, and that the story is really about the villain trying to regain his humanity. It becomes really the story of Darth Vader's redemption. Everybody thought of Darth Vader as this big evil guy that had no heart. He was just evil. But in the end, it's not that at all. And here's a guy who has lost everything.
He believes that he's the chosen one. He's not doing wrong things knowing that it's having a negative impact. So there's that sort of naivety to him now that wasn't there before. And it makes him more human in a lot of ways.
The real fun of Episode 3 is the fact that it connects all the dots. Finally, you can see how Episode 1 relates to Episode 6 and how they all come together. You got to remember, this is one movie, and it's meant to be seen 1 through 6. So I think when you watch the actual movie in order, the story will become very clear that Anakin is the chosen one. And even when Anakin turns into Darth Vader, he is still the chosen one. He forces his friends to turn against him, which is heartbreaking.
You were the chosen one!
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force.
When you're a kid, he's the pinnacle of all evil. There is that mystery there, He is a man behind a mask. There will be more depth, though, to that evil, because it's not a conscious, choice that he's made.
Darth Vader became such an icon in the first film, Episode 4, that icon of evil sort of took over everything, much more than I intended. If it had been one movie, that wouldn't have happened. He would have been revealed to be this pathetic character at the end of the movie. But now by adding Episodes 1, 2, and 3, people begin to see the tragedy of Darth Vader as what it was originally intended to be. Nobody who's evil thinks of themselves as evil.
My loyalties lie with the Chancellor.
They always believe they're doing good, even though they're not. And so it's a matter of how does a person who is good turn to becoming an evil person.
Anakin's relationship with Palpatine is one of deference and seduction. He lures Anakin into a very impressionable state.
I have rewritten, I spent the whole weekend rewriting the scene between you and Palpatine, where you turn.
Yeah.
And I've added some more to that. I've stretched it out a bit and made it a little bit, given you a little bit more to go on in terms of him pulling you in.
I hope you trust me, Anakin.
Of course.
I need your help, son.
He pulls each string with such charming yet evil precision.
It happens once the Emperor starts to work on him and make him doubt things, make him doubt his relationship to the Jedi, make him doubt what is good in the universe. He throws out the possibility that he could keep his wife and save her from death. These are all seduction things, which causes a great deal of turmoil in Anakin. This is where he finally succumbs to the influence of the devil. What is it in the human brain that gives us the capacity to be as evil as human beings have been? That's what I wonder. I wonder, how can those people possibly exist? Compassion and greed. We all have those two sides of us. We have to make sure that those two sides of us are in balance.
What happens when you go to the dark side is it gets out of balance.
Dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Only now, at the end, do you understand?
I was interested in how well the actors played against each other and trying to find the right ensemble to work together. It wasn't just the actors individually, but as how they worked as a group.
Okay, cut it. And.
The mic was in frame.
The mic was in picture. The mic was in picture.
When I first did Star Wars, I did it as a big piece. It was like a big script. It was way too big to make into a movie. So I took the first third of it, which was basically the first act, and I turned that into what was the original Star Wars. In the process of rewriting that script and thinking of it as only a movie and not the whole, trilogy, I decided that Ben Kenobi really didn't serve any useful function after the point he fights with Darth Vader. Although in that draft, he continued on through the air battle at the end, and then he continued on through the whole script, the other two stories. And but when I took one and I looked at it, I said, he just stands around for the last 25% of the film, watching this air battle go on. And he really has no real function, and it would probably be much more satisfying, powerful, and interesting if Darth Vader were to kill him, or he were to go into a different form. I made that decision based on just working on Star Wars. After Star Wars was successful, and I said, well, gee, I could finish this entire script, I could do the other two parts. I came to certain realizations about things that were in the script that were more difficult to now translate.
Often Star Wars characters sacrifice themselves. Think of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He went to battle the dark side, Darth Vader, and sacrificed himself for everybody.
Action!
I had Luke being trained by Ben, only I had killed Ben off. So now I had to come up with another Jedi who was older and wiser and shorter than Ben to train Luke. And that's how, that was the beginning premise of Yoda.
Why are you here? I'm looking for someone. Looking? Found someone you have? Right.
One of the earlier things I did is I got Joe Johnston to work on Yoda to try to figure out, what he would look like so it'd be easier to write him. That really comes from a tradition in mythological storytelling, fairy tales, of the hero finding a little creature on the side of the road that seems very insignificant and not very important, who comes out to be the master wizard, the master thing, or the guide, the main guide in the movie for the hero. So I wanted him to be a little insignificant character, somebody that, like a frog or something that you just didn't pay any attention to. And he turns out to be the most powerful Jedi in the universe. And so that was why he started out being very small and green. And then we wanted to make him attractive but strange. And so he's actually got proportions very much like a baby, and with giant ears.
Frank Oz and his associates have come up with different heads. None of them work. So Stuart Freeborn, the makeup expert, he said, Can you give me a week? I'll give you the head of Yoda.
He showed me a few drawings and things he had with him, and I looked at them. And I thought, well, that's interesting there and there, but I want something in more depth. I looked in the mirror, and I thought, well, something perhaps a little bit amusing about my face. At least I could get that in. So I modelled something of myself. And I thought, now I've got to make him look intelligent. And I got this photograph of Einstein, and on top of what I'd roughly done of myself, I then put the Einstein wrinkles in all around.
And here was his head. And I looked at him, and I looked at Yoda, and I realized what everybody was realizing and couldn't say. It was a self-portrait of Stuart Freeborn.
I'm not afraid.
Oh, you will be. You will be. Sorry. No problems.
You know, on the original films, I was never in my dressing room. You know, when I wasn't in a scene, they always knew I'd be in Stuart Freeborn's shop. I remember Stuart whipping up the green foam that they were going to pour into the Yoda mold. He said, "You want to pour some?" I said, "Yeah." Are you kidding me?
The most complex one, the most sophisticated one is the smallest one, that is the Yoda. He's only 2 foot high, and of course he has to have all the animation that's possible to give him, which is difficult on such a small creature. He could even steal the picture. That would be great if he does.
As a very wise man once said,
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
With puppets, a puppet generally you're working symbolically. A puppet is a symbol of whatever you're trying to portray.
The co-director and collaborator on Dark Crystal is also the man behind Yoda. Frank Oz is the puppeteer and the voice of the 900-year-old cosmic sage of the Dagobah system. On one fateful walk, E.T. discovers our fascination with strange and wonderful creatures. Yoda and E.T.
I wanted a sort of a slick used car dealer voice, and tried everything I could to get another actor to come up to the performances that Tony had, and I just couldn't find anybody to do it. And that was one of the reasons why I ended up with James Earl Jones as Darth Vader, because it really takes a top-class actor to pull off that kind of an idea, to really be able to get into a part where you're just putting your voice over an animated character, or, you know, in this case it's not even an animated character, because it's a character that's already been shot. So it's the reverse of what you get to do in animation. In animation you get to sort of act it and create it. In this one you're sort of working within the confines of what somebody else has already created. You know, the movement and the timing and all that sort of thing has been determined for you. And to be able to come up with a really excellent performance, given that if you're not the one that's actually doing it, it's extremely difficult.
This was the first set I ever saw out in Tunisia. You know, on the other shot, when I says to R2, you know, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
I've already seen them, so they ought to be kind of in the doorway.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to cut it, but...
That whole end of it is a little tricky.
You just throw it all away. You cut me out of this, make it easier.
He has a way of tilting his head or raising it back that's, it says more probably than a person would do.
The face itself has no expression, but I find working with Tony Daniels, who plays the part, you read expressions into that face. To me, he has an incredibly mobile face. He looks quizzical, you know when he's in danger.
I can't stop myself making all the faces and smiling or frowning or looking worried. Even though I'm way behind something, nobody can see what I'm doing. But for myself, I'm doing all the actions. And people come up and they take the face and they say, oh, I'll try this on. And they put it on and they take it off again because they can't bear it, you know. I don't know, there's something wrong with me that I can put up with it.
I rather love 3PO. I think he's a nice guy. I think he gets a rough time, but that's part of the magic of it.
There are so many new characters and situations and effects. I thought they would have used them all up on the first Star Wars. And, you know, I arrive in the studio and there's something quite magical to see in some new monster. I saw one today, great sort of splodge thing. And it's, of course, great fun to act with all that, and it's very stimulating. .3PO is, I think, very like an English butler. He's that particularly British sort of person, very archaic and rather out of his time.
And action!
And consequently, he finds all the things that happen in Star Wars. You know, the battles, the explosions, all the nasty characters like Darth Vader. He finds that very worrying.
Tony!
With 3PO, I think he's one of the more human characters in the film.
Another one was the Wookiee. In the end of the film, it takes place on a Wookiee planet, and there's a big battle with the Empire and the Wookiees and that sort of thing. Since I couldn't do that, I took one of the Wookiees and made him a co-pilot with Harrison. But in the original concept, the Wookiees were a primitive tribe, and that was sort of key to what was going on at the end of the film. And then when I put Chewbacca in as a co-pilot, I've kind of established them as a fairly sophisticated race. And so then, when I went back, I couldn't use the Wookiees, so I turned them into Ewoks.
Cut it out!
Well, it's fun, really. Yeah, it's great fun. But there is a lot of waiting around, you know.
You do one, you three work together. One more time, last time. You do your arm stretch.
Back in 1981, my grandmother heard a radio commercial in which they were looking for short people to be in the new Star Wars movie. And so she told my mum, who then phoned up the studios, and they said, well, we've got everyone we need. We had so many calls. Mum then said that I was a big fan of the films and that I was only 11. And they started to think, actually, maybe we could have some sort of younger Ewoks.
Yeah, but I need a spear.
All we have to do is just go down that path.
Oh, that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what we're not.
Are we going to be fighting at all, do you know?
Because
What, we just run away and that's it?
Right, that's it.
Yeah.
It's just one scene.
Oh, that's easy, John.
Oh, yeah.
I managed to sort of wrangle my way into episode 1. I actually had to drop a lot of hints to George all the time, be sort of pestering him, basically. I used to send faxes. It kind of fulfilled a childhood dream to be in Star Wars and then to go on to kind of meet my heroes in the flesh, you know, in the shape of Han Solo, Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia. I mean, it was the most amazing thing in the world.
Well, I like putting the costume on, and that's when I've got it on, it feels good. And it's just nice to feel that you're in Star Wars. And so when you see it in the cinema, you'll say, that's me, and yeah, it'll be good.
The original concept of the Ewok was that he'd be short and small, sort of a short version of a Wookiee. The original designs were much more human-like, little men. And I wanted to get away from it looking like a man in a furry suit. I wanted it to be a creature unto itself. And in evolving that, more and more fur got put on, and the eyes got bigger, and he became more animal-like.
For a few weeks, the California forest was transformed into the green moon of Endor.
It'll work. It wasn't easy, but we couldn't have done it without you.
That's all right.
Thanks a lot. You worked really hard.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
We'll miss you.
Give my loves to the Ewoks.
Sure will.
He started out in American Graffiti, and then I used him as a foil to do tests in Star Wars. I didn't actually interview him for Star Wars. He was brought in to do, play against the other actors. I had all these Lukes coming in, and so he would play against them, and I shot the screen test. And, when you watch the screen tests of him playing the role and the other actors who were up for the role playing the role, there was just no question about who was the best. And, so I hired him for Star Wars.
Science and technology have advanced the art of today's creature movies. But like Star Wars, the best of them succeed because they celebrate the human spirit. The little guys like Luke Skywalker and his strange assortments of creature friends win, not because of magic, but because they believe in themselves. That belief provides the kind of power that makes it possible for young women, like Princess Leia, to rescue young men in distress.
I was looking for a princess who was young. Ideally, I wanted somebody about 16 years old, 17 years old. Both Luke and Leia were supposed to be around the same age, and I wanted somebody, teenager-like. So it was finding somebody who could hold her own against strong actors, and still be the princess that she needed to be, and be the authority figure that she needed to be, and make it believable. And she was able to do that. And again, with these actors, all of them, I tested. I'd seen thousands of people, tested, 20 or 30 people, and then gone down to on tape. And then gone to a very finite group of, maybe 7 or 8 actors for each role on film, and then studied it, and then we did that process again. So it was a very complicated procedure that took like 9 months to go through. So it wasn't just a that's the one kind of thing. It was a very arduous, thoughtful process.
The Blockade Runner is the first ship that you ever see in Star Wars, the ship that is running from the Imperial Star Destroyer.
It's the first time we ever see Princess Leia.
I will probably always be identified as this person. Vivian Leigh was always Scarlett O'Hara, except to Olivier. I don't know. I will probably be Princess Leia till I'm 85 years old. Are you happy now?
In the fairy tales, a princess is to be rescued, and she was far from being a damsel in distress.
Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
Huh? She found both Han and I incompetent. You call this a rescue? Give me those guns. It still makes me laugh.
What the hell are you doing? Somebody has to save our skins.
She's just authoritative and just plows ahead. It doesn't matter. Let's go through this shower of asteroids. Who cares? And my hair won't get messed up. So she's different from. I like her. I like her independence, and I do wish that I had a little bit more of. Come on, let's just walk through the traffic. It doesn't bother me. It's not I won't get hurt. There's a sequel. So, on that level, I envy her. I admit it.
I think they're moving away.
Just trying to stir something up. We're safe.
Where have I heard that before?
I like the process of doing these films, and I like the people that are involved in it. I like the script. I mean, George Lucas's brain, I like his brain.
Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and Billy D. Williams.
You die in the movie?
No. Not yet, anyway. No, I understand. They want to carry this character on. I play a character called Lando Calrissian. He's an ex-running buddy of Han Solo. He's a kind of a cavalier character. I think he's a combination of a good guy and a bad guy. He ends up running a city called Cloud City. I think he's going to be part of the heroes, you know.
Well, look at you, a general, huh?
Another mechanical creature from the movies, R2-D2 from Star Wars. When actor Kenny Baker is inside R2, it qualifies as a man in a tin suit.
R2! Action! Come on, come on!
Even though R2 is nothing more than metal, wiring, and paint, he emerges as a somebody, a person we can laugh with and cheer for.
My goodness!
We can feel his pain.
Now, droid R2-D2.
An extremely well put together little droid. Without a doubt, it saved the ship.
Welcome to Sesame Street.
So that's where we are, Sesame Street. But why did you bring me here? Oh, you and your secret missions.
I'll just have to run him over and wreck it, otherwise he put me out of business.
I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
I chose an actor who has that presence of the dark side to work with, as opposed to somebody who's very lighthearted and funny, and trying to get him to have an undercurrent of dark side all the time. And Hayden's been very good at that. And so then you're very strong on that. It's almost said with not a little bit of anger, a tinge of, I will, determination and anger.
Oh, Anakin, what are you gonna do?
I will not betray the Republic.
That's your rationalization for everything you've done. There's always this good in you at this point. The good part is saying, what am I doing? And the bad part is saying, I'm doing this for Padme, I'm doing this for us, and it'll be better for the universe, it'll be better for everybody. But there's always this little part in you is saying, what am I doing?
I'm not the Jedi that I should be. I want more, but I know I shouldn't.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
What?
Where we left him in episode 2, he was consumed by conflicting emotions. His love for Padme, a resentment of his Jedi obligations, and the restrictions that placed on his life, a feeling that he was being held back, a lust for power, which was really magnified by his mother's death, and a fear, which is important, a fear that such an occurrence could happen again. When we find him in episode 3, he's still very much enveloped by these same tormenting feelings that, the Jedi aren't affording him enough respect.
As you start complaining, there's got to be a little bit of anger behind it, a little bit of frustration. Okay. And action.
Sometimes I wonder what's happening to the Jedi Order. I think this war is destroying the principles of the Republic.
This war represents a failure to listen. Now you're closer to the Chancellor than anyone. Please ask him to stop the fighting and let the diplomacy resume.
Don't ask me to do that.
His life has become more complicated, and this all culminates into an anger, compounded by changing relationships with both Palpatine and Obi-Wan. I mean, he begins to question the Jedi as a whole, but especially Obi-Wan.
To go back to the beginning, the first day we did Star Wars was the first day that a trumpeter called Maurice Murphy had been admitted as a member to the London Symphony Orchestra. So the first service he did was Star Wars recording #1, and he came into the stage and blew that top C, which sort of blew the world's head off. When we recorded the music of the first film, none of us had any idea that we'd ever hear the music again. I feel very privileged to have been able to do all of them to this point. I don't think there's anything quite like it in the history of film. We have the opportunity over decades to take the same material, use it again, and add something to it, and revoice it and rework it.
Hey! Hey! Listen to me, Chewie!
This is marvelous. This is very touching here, I think. I need you to protect her. All that. I love that.
I don't like to read scripts. Reading anything, we form our own sort of vision of what things look like. I'd rather look at a film and be surprised at what's happening and remember those moments that are revelatory.
I love you.
I know. What are you going to say? I love you too, Violin.
The process for me is that I have to go to the piano and start to work. I can't do it thinking about it or walking around the room or walking in the trees. I have to go to the piano, start to write something that isn't very good, look at it the next day or a week later and try to make it better. I will take scene by scene. I will write a few bars and then go look at what I've done on the screen and rework it.
He writes and then he goes to the piano every once in a while and makes sure that he's still in the same key, and he comes back and he writes some more. Great composers all wrote that way.
He still writes by hand. He doesn't compose out of computer. I mean, technology can change the picture, but John's thematics, it's the same brilliance as it was for the first one.
How many scenes have we scored with this guy in it?
Welcome, young Skywalker. I have been expecting you.
The prophecy is that Anakin will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. He becomes Darth Vader. Darth Vader does become the hero. Darth Vader does destroy the Sith, meaning himself and the Emperor. He does it because he is redeemed by his son.
You can't sort of go home and rehearse your reaction to a 9-foot ice monster breaking through a wall. You know, you just have to go on the day and see what happens. But it's never dull.
1, 2. On guard, dialogue.
I took karate, kendo, and did a little bit of weight training. They sort of want to mix that martial arts flavor in with the traditional foil fencing.
That's good. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Here we have to rest now.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I can't talk now. I'm out of breath. Difficult?
He's becoming better than Errol Flynn.
What do you mean by difficult?
The analogy to me is graduation. You know, it's like being in your senior year. You're glad that you're finishing, but savoring every moment because you know it is the last. So all stops are out and it's all go.
I hope that if there's any lasting legacy of the character is the idea that you can accomplish anything you want if you are selfless and willing to do what's right for the greater good. You know, he was a a symbol of optimism, and I think that's probably the most satisfying aspect of the character.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
He's every boy or girl who yearns for adventure, who thinks this can't be all there is.
Tell your sister you've arrived.
What George created with Star Wars was utterly unique. It's not a science fiction film, it's not science fantasy, it's not this, it's not that, it's Star Wars.
As I see it, this has nothing to do with past, present, or future. Star Wars could be in any of those areas.
It's a big part of what makes these films so important to pass on from generation to generation.
I like these films.
I think there's a legacy that's important.
It is ahead.
You must feel the Force around you.
The Force is strong in my family. My father has it. I have it. You have that power.
A Jedi.
My young Jedi.
I like these films. I like that I was there.
To see not just my character, but every last character that you've been introduced to since the very beginning find their destiny. It's exactly how it had to be.
I've always called it a space fantasy, designed to be a modern fairy tale.
Hopefully, it will, justify it as a series. Make you say, gee, what happens next? I think the real satisfaction will come out of completing what we started out to do. And I don't think there's been anything quite like this, a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is the final chapter. It's the big finish.
Will be with you, always.
Oh, my poor circuits. It's all so very complicated. I don't see how they ever put all this together. Well, really, R2. Of course we all want to see how it worked out.
It has a magic, Star Wars. That magic doesn't lie only in its brilliant special effects. Its power derives from its spirit of romance and adventure. It's like the movies and cliffhanging serials of the past. It's an exciting and very special fantasy. And when it came out, the world went instantly Star Wars crazy.
On the eve of Star Wars release, 20th Century Fox, George Lucas, and the cast and crew braced themselves for the worst. One way or another, May 25th, 1977, would be a day they'd never forget.
We released, I think, in 37 theaters initially and broke 36 house records.
I used to drive by and look at the lines and think, what? I mean, it was the first sort of blockbuster.
The film is breaking attendance records all over the country. Not since Jaws have so many people stood in line to see a movie. Star Wars cost $9 million to produce. It will bring in at least 10 times that amount. As a result, the price of 20th Century Fox stock has doubled in the last 2 weeks.
The attendance at Star Wars has been almost astronomical. Queues are still forming. What is the attraction of Star Wars? Who can say? There have been lavish spectaculars before. Perhaps it's because this one takes the best from all the rest. In London, after a month, almost 600,000 flocked to see the film, an all-time record. In America, more money was taken at box offices in 1 week than for the prestigious Jaws.
May 1977. A legion of fans are already waiting when Star Wars opens at Hollywood's legendary Chinese theater. Similar record-breaking crowds gather at the openings in Australia and England. Eager moviegoers rewrite the record books around the world as George Lucas's science fiction adventure becomes an unprecedented international phenomenon. There has indeed been nothing like it in the history of the movies.
It's almost midnight and the countdown is on here at the Esquire Theater because at 12:01 a.m. Wednesday morning, the first official showing of The Return of the Jedi rolls onto the big screen. The Force of the Jedi cast its spell on Chicago's sold-out audiences throughout the dawning hours. By 8 a.m., over 9,000 starstruck fans shared the new secrets of the Empire. The galactic faithful gathered in droves to put on a show to rival the epic featured inside.
The first showing of Return of the Jedi at Highland Mall was at 11 this morning, but the line you see winding around three sides of the theater started forming at 10 for the 1:40 show. That's how the movie is being received here in Austin on this premiere day.
Some people are predicting the Return of the Jedi could topple E.T., the extraterrestrial, from the top of the box office hit list. And it might when you have people who will wait in line for hours to get a ticket, especially those who get there at 5:30 in the morning.
A new movie, the third in the Star Wars series, opens on Wednesday. And when it opens in Hollywood, some will have been waiting in line for more than a week.
It won't open for 2 more days, but already the lines are down the block. These are the 50-odd, emphasis on odd, men and women who've camped outside a Hollywood theater, some for the past 6 days and nights, to be first in line for Jedi.
And all over the country, Star Wars fans have been waiting in line for tickets to tomorrow's opening of Return of the Jedi.
It isn't so much that the film set box office records wherever it played, but rather that it played such a large role in the lives of many who came to see it. They came and they waited for Star Wars and for each of the 2 sequels that followed. In city after city across America, the same scenario was repeatedly played out.
People will camp out overnight to see the Rose Parade. And this is worth at least 3 times as good as the Rose Parade, so we're here for 3 times as long. We've been here for 6 days and it's great!
Some even got married in Star Wars movie lines and spent their honeymoons inside at the movies.
This is fucking awesome. Yeah!
We're here at Grauman's Chinese Theater, the place where Star Wars premiered 25 years ago, and now it's happening all over again. We're here for Attack of the Clones.
Here's how it looked across the mainland tonight as the movie opened up. In Raleigh, North Carolina, more than 100 people lined up for the opening of Star Wars. And in Chicago, fans have been in line, some for as many as 10 days, waiting for the film to debut. Live at the Signature Theater, inside the theater.
These are my people.
Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker, put down his lightsaber today to walk his mom down the red carpet at the charity preview screening of Star Wars 2, Attack of the Clones.
Star Wars, Attack of the Clones. Some camped out for months to be the first ones inside. Fans say they couldn't wait for the new movie to come out and didn't mind waiting until midnight to see it. One employment expert estimates as many as 2.5 million people across the country will call in sick today with the so-called Star Wars flu.
Advanced ticket sales have been brisk. Even a weekday matinee ticket may be a tough get. The employment firm Challenger, Gray & Christmas estimates more than 2.5 million people may conveniently catch the Star Wars flu and call in sick to work today.
You're looking at close to $320 million in wages that are going to come off the books on opening day.
Michael, we're only 3 hours away from the premiere of Revenge of the Sith, and this place, well, it's already packed. Tickets to the first show, they sold out weeks ago, and hardcore fans, well, they began lining up as early as last night to get those best seats of the house. Well, we are only 2 hours away from the premiere of Revenge of the Sith, and if you want tickets to the first showing at midnight and you don't have any tickets already, forget about it. They sold out a long time ago.
More than 500 people are here. You see them here, they're lined up through the door and around the corner.
That's it.
c'est lui qui faisait la caméra.
1,500 Galactic fans will get to see a preview screening, but most won't be able to get in to the sold-out event.
Let me show you the scene back here. This is the promenade in Modesto where the stars strolled down, all of them saying that they were excited to catch an early peek at the end of a saga. Screaming fans couldn't get enough of Mark Hamill tonight outside the Brendan Theaters. Hamill played Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy and was welcomed back a hero. It is quite the scene down here in Modesto. It was an event of colossal proportions, fitting for the last movie in the Star Wars series.
It's a dream. It's a coincidence.
For more than a decade now, there's been a burning question on the minds of Star Wars fans around the world.
If people take away one thing from seeing this film, what do you want them to take away from the whole saga?
Well, ultimately, what it is that caused you to turn to the dark side and what the consequences are.
I think one of the key factors in the success is that it's a positive film. It has heroes and villains, and that it essentially is a fun movie to watch.
Please like, subscribe, and comment on the video. May the Force be with you.